2,000 years, Chinese historians called him the monster who burned the books and buried the scholars alive. They wrote it in the dynasty that came after him. They published it using the writing system he standardized. They distributed it along the road network he built. They filed it through the bureaucratic structure he invented. And not one of them mentioned the contradiction. His name was Ying Zheng, Qin Shu Huang, the first emperor. He was, by the testimony of every historian who ever wrote about him, a tyrant, and by the institutional record of every dynasty that came after him, the inventor of China. Stay with me. Because this story ends with a man drinking mercury, while 8,000 clay soldiers waited underground to protect him in the afterlife, having conquered everything except death. Ying Zheng was born in 259 BCE. His father was the crown prince of Qin, a small but militarily formidable state in the northwest that its neighbors considered semi-barbaric. His mother was a concubine from the state of Zhao, and the question of whether his actual biological father was the crown prince or the merchant-turned-minister, Lu Buwei, was a scandal that circulated in the courts of all 7 warring states. He became King of Qin at 13, when his father died suddenly. For the first 9 years, real power resided with Lu Buwei, his regent, his possible father, the man who had built a political career on ambiguity about the boy's parentage. The relationship was, at minimum, uncomfortable. At 22, Ying Zheng moved. He exiled Lu Buwei to Sichuan. The following year, Lu Buwei drank poison. Whether this was suicide or execution by subtle pressure, the sources disagree. What is not disputed: a young king with every reason for personal grievance had just removed the one man who held power over him. The regency was over. Qin's military machine had a new owner. The 7 warring states had been fighting each other for 2.5 centuries. No single state had ever managed total unification. In 230 BCE, Ying Zheng began the attempt that everyone before him had failed. He did it in 9 years. The sequence was not random. It was strategic. Han fell first in 230 BCE, the weakest state, cutting off potential alliances. Zhao in 228 neutralized a powerful northern rival. Wei in 225 flooded. Qin forces diverted a river to drown the capital of Daliang. Chu in 223 required the largest campaign. 600,000 soldiers under Wang Jian after a previous commander's failure. Yan in 222. Qi in 221, which surrendered without a major battle. The last king of Qi, historically the wealthiest of all the states, was imprisoned in a pine forest and died of starvation. 6 kingdoms in 9 years. The speed was not coincidence. Qin's military had been systematically restructured by reforms going back to Shangyang a century earlier. A merit-based military, a bureaucratic administration that functioned independently of aristocratic privilege, and an agricultural system optimized to feed armies in the field. The other states had ancient noble families. Qin had a machine. This is the chapter that gets left out of the Tyrant narrative. After unification in 221 BCE, Ying Zheng faced a problem that no Chinese ruler had ever faced before. Governing not a kingdom, but an empire of formerly hostile states with different laws, different money, different writing systems, and different measurements for every transaction and official document. He solved it with unprecedented systematic efficiency. Now, the book burning. The historians rarely explain it carefully, because careful explanation complicates the narrative they need. In 213 BCE, on the recommendation of his minister Li Si, Qin Shi Huang ordered the burning of privately held copies of books outside specific categories. The exemptions were significant. Books on medicine, agriculture, divination, and technical subjects were spared. What was targeted? The philosophical texts of the 100 schools of thought, Confucian classics, historical records of the former kingdoms, philosophical works that could be used to legitimize resistance to Qin's new order. The key detail that most accounts omit: the imperial library kept complete copies of everything. This was not an attempt to destroy knowledge. It was an attempt to control who had access to knowledge that could be weaponized as political criticism. It was censorship, not annihilation. The annihilation came later. In 206 BCE, 4 years after Qin Shi Huang's death, during the civil war that ended the Qin dynasty, a general named Xiang Yu sacked the Qin capital of Xianyang and burned the imperial palaces. The imperial library burned with them. The fire reportedly burned for 3 months. The majority of ancient Chinese texts that were lost, gone permanently, were lost in Xiang Yu's fire, not in Qin Shi Huang's book burning. The historians who blamed the first emperor for the destruction of ancient knowledge were working from sources destroyed by someone else. The buried scholars, 212 BCE, are more straightforward in their cruelty and more disputed in their scale. Qin Shi Huang reportedly had 460 scholars buried alive after some of them failed to procure the elixir of immortality, and others criticized him publicly. The sources are Confucian historians, with direct institutional reasons to portray him as an enemy of scholars. Modern historians accept that something happened: a purge, possibly executions, possibly on a smaller scale. The number 460 appears only in sources written after the fact by the tradition he suppressed. This does not mean it did not happen. It means the evidence is contaminated in a specific direction. He conquered death everywhere except in his own body. By the late 200s BCE, Qin Shi Huang had become increasingly consumed by his fear of dying. He had spent his life eliminating enemies, kingdoms, ministers, rivals, scholars. Death was the one enemy his armies could not reach. He sent expeditions to find the elixir of immortality. The most famous, in 219 BCE, he dispatched an alchemist explorer named Shu Fu with a fleet of ships carrying thousands of young men and women to find the mythical Eastern Isles, the home of the immortals. Shu Fu departed. He never returned. Japanese traditions centuries later would claim he arrived in Japan and became a founding figure of early Japanese culture. What is certain, thousands of people sailed into the ocean and were never seen again. The alchemists who remained at court offered an alternative. Mercury compounds, which they promised contained the essence of immortality. Qin Shi Huang began taking them regularly. He died on an inspection tour in 210 BCE. He was 49 years old. Mercury is a neurotoxin. He had also built his tomb, an underground complex of extraordinary scale. Ancient sources describe rivers of mercury flowing through it, representing the rivers of China. Modern soil analysis of the mausoleum of the first Qin emperor has detected mercury levels 100 times above normal in the surrounding soil. He was buried inside a monument to his own immortality, having been killed by his immortality medicine. 8,000 terracotta soldiers stood guard outside, an army in clay to protect him in the afterlife. The same army in clay that 1974 farmers discovered when they dug a well. The soldiers have individual faces. Scholars debate whether they were modeled on real soldiers. Each one carries real weapons, bronze swords that, when analyzed, were still sharp after 200 years. The army that conquered the world preserved underground, while the dynasty they conquered it for collapsed above them within 4 years. He wanted to live forever. He died at 49. The empire he built lasted 15 years. The systems he created lasted 2,000 years. The Confucian historians won the argument. The first emperor won the civilization.